Holy moly. We go into the bye with a 1 point win against the Demons on King's birthday. Neil Danaher's freeze M&D 11 round. Let's talk about it. What a game that was, right? What an absolute game that was. And, I went into this game thinking, what did I say? I think I said 30 plus points on my preview. And I was pretty convinced that we were going to sort of, be able to not cruise, but over the last, 3 weeks, beating, smashing North Melbourne, smashing Hawthorn, I thought we were going to win a little bit more comfortably against the Demons, but it wasn't to be. And before we go on and talk about, this game and my thoughts and stuff like that, let me just, applaud Melbourne themselves because they played outstanding football. And we talked about this in the preview, and we've been talking about it for the last week or so, that they've actually been in a bit of good form, especially after their really slow start. Last week was a bit of an anomaly in the in Alice Springs because they just couldn't kick. They couldn't kick straight in that last half. But they played out of their skin. Max Gawn was just in his all-Australian form. He was absolutely everywhere, albeit, that last kick wasn't something to write home about, obviously. But even like Stephen May, who I don't really like, and Lever, their backman, Bowie, there's that Turner, Frisch getting off the chain in the last quarter, Pickett. What I said in the preview was that, we can't, and in team talk, was that we can't underestimate these teams. This team, because they have superstars and premiership players everywhere. And they really played out of their skin. And, they were beating us. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I know in like contested possession, inside 50s, just ball use and disposals and stuff, they outnumbered us, right? They were all plus in all of those categories. And on paper, they probably should have won that game. And like looking at the score, 10-11 to 11-6, they had more scoring shots than us. They had 21 scoring shots to our 17. And, again, the kicking didn't help them. And it wasn't just kicking at goal. It was also kicking around the ground. I think they went at less than 55% kicking efficiency. And we went at about 75% or something like that. But I thought I'd just give Melbourne plaudits. And I don't usually do that to any of the teams, but I thought they played really, really well. And we're probably unlucky not to get the win. But let's talk about these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Collingwood Magpies. This game marks 5 wins in a row for us, right? So we lose our first game, we win 6 in a row, we lose to Geelong, we win 5 in a row, and now we go into the bye at an 11-2 with about 134% on the ladder. Top of the ladder, 6 points clear. Mind the gap if you don't mind, Inspector. And it was one of those performances where it was just so reminiscent to 2023. Like, we go up by 20 points, but you still didn't feel comfortable. When we were up by 20 points against Hawthorn, I felt comfortable because Hawthorn weren't playing that well. But we needed just one more goal to sort of really break Melbourne backs. But credit to Melbourne, like I said, they just kept coming back and they were in the lead, and then we got in the lead. But this game, we praise the forwards and the mids a lot. And, they obviously, McStay on his return kicks 2 goals. Phenomenal, right? And the mids, we'll talk about Nick Dacos in a little bit, but, you look at Steele Sidebottom, Scott Penbury had 29 disposals. So the mids are doing their job. But I think this game was won by our backmen. And it was these guys that were standing up in 22 and 23. It's Jeremy Howe who's wound the clock back, which is just phenomenal. I got his numbers in front of me. He had 3 intercept marks, 14 intercept possessions. And he's back to, I reckon he's probably in all-Australian form. He's had a really, really good season. And there was a bit where he dropped off, I think, maybe for one game, that game that he came back, which I think was the Fremantle game he might have come back to, and he dropped off for that game. But other than that, I thought he played phenomenally today. And Isaac Quaynor was back to his 2023, 2022 form. Like, he started off the season pretty slowly and has gradually been building up. These last 3 or 4 weeks have just been really great for him. He's been improving week on week on week. Billy Frampton, Darcy Moore. I thought these guys, they did everything that you sort of wanted them to. Yes, the Melbourne forwards got, a bit of the best of them in that last quarter. But there were also some Melbourne goals that were just a bit freakish, right? Frisch's goal. Was Fritsch? Is it Fritsch? I don't really care. Fritsch's goal. Pickett kicked that one off the ground, but then you look at Josh Dacos, who is a backman, but getting midfield numbers, right? And winning the Neil Danaher trophy. Houston did what he needed to do. Perryman did what he needed to do. So I think our back half was really, really, really sound and was a lot of the reason, or probably most of the reason why we went on to win this game. Another reason is these older guys, but we're going to call them experienced guys, right? We're just... If we talked about Jeremy Howe turning the clock back, it's not even just Howe, it's Pendles, it's Sidey. It's these guys where they were just written off. They were just absolutely written off at the start of the year, and we were all written off at the start of the oldest list, blah, 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 blah. Then, you got Darcy Cameron, who's not old, he's turning 30. He had 5 intercept marks, the equal most on the game. So, even though Max Gawn did play better than him, and Melbourne did get on top of him, especially in centre clearances and hit-outs, what Darcy Cameron was able to do was work Max around the ground, and Darcy Cameron loves to drop back, takes those intercept marks. So, it's these guys, and I thought Jack Crisp had a really good game. It's these older statesmen, these experienced guys that are going to take us, hopefully, really deep into September, and it is that sort of passing on the baton. It's Will Hoskin-Elliott coming on as a sub. It was just, all these guys were just absolutely fantastic. We talk a lot about, Collingwood playing dry football in a wet weather day. Thankfully, it wasn't raining, but it was still, the ground was still that sort of muddy, wetty, underfoot. So it was still very sloppy at times, but we were pretty much clean with our hands. What I did notice that we did last year, and if you watch my video the last time we met, I did talk about this, was the uncontested possession game, that kick and mark game where, we did that last year to Melbourne to not let them sort of get the ball, and we were plus pretty much 70 in uncontested possessions, and lower turnovers as well. So again, I've talked about how we can change gears for every single team, and we're this chameleon team now, and that's exactly what we were able to see tonight. And I think it just gives you, a really good insight and look into what goes on behind closed doors, the stuff that we don't see. It's the line meetings. It's the, the Oppo scout meetings. And, okay, Melbourne like to do X, Y, Z. What if we just don't give them the ball, And I'm sure I haven't looked at our uncontested possession game throughout these last couple of weeks, but it definitely, let's just say the Kangaroos game and the Hawthorn game didn't look anything like this. Maybe it is the opponent, right? And maybe I'm just making stuff up. But we didn't even really get our game going. There wasn't that run and carry game that we liked. There was a little bit of it, but there wasn't a lot. And I wish I could see the numbers of how many we score from intercepts, the points from intercepts, possessions, and stuff like that. Because I think we might have scored most of our goals from intercept possessions tonight. But that's our bread and butter. I know I was talking to some friends throughout the game, and I was on ground level 1, right on the boundary. I do like sitting up a little bit more so I can see more of the ground, like from a bird's eye sort of view, see what's sort of going on. But they were saying to me that we looked a little bit slow. I really couldn't see that from the ground itself. So let me know if you thought, were we playing too slow? Were we not running and carrying? But you also have to play to your opponent, and that seems like what we were doing. I think it was really nice to see Dan McStay back out there as well. We saw the Triple M's go about it, and they each kicked a goal. Dan McStay was our only multiple goal kicker. The only negative that I sort of have on this game, and I think it is, with Dan McStay coming into this team, that we think that we can bomb it in long, and one of McStay, Membry, or Mychek are going to market. But when you're going up against Max Gawn, when you're going up against May and Lever, who are, I think they're both all Australians, and just really good defenders just in general, you're not going to pretty much outmark them if they've got a good run at it. And we saw that multiple times. And yes, Melbourne were doing that to us as well. That's why you've seen Darcy Cameron have 5 intercept marks and stuff like that. But the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over and over and over again, expecting a different result. And it just reminded me of the GWS game where we kept kicking it to Sam Taylor, and a little bit of the Geelong game where we were kicking it to Blixarves and what's the other guy that they have down there? I think they had TDK down there at times as well, taking those intercept marks. So there was a little bit of a pattern where those losing games were when we were kicking it to their tall timbers down back and not lowering our eyes. So that's probably one thing that I would like to see us do more of. I know I was watching, was it On the Couch or Fox Footy, or it was one of these ones where they were saying that we kick mostly to lead ups, and that's in our forward 50, and not a lot of teams do that or something. I think that was, I don't have the actual stat in front of me. I'm just going off memory, and I got the worst memory. But we just weren't really doing that today, and you know, that's probably credit to Melbourne. But when you're kicking long and you're kicking it to these players, more often than not, unless you've got a good fly up there, or you know, at times we weren't even competing with these guys. These guys were just marking unattended, and that's what you don't want to see. So that would be something that I definitely need these guys to work on. But that's probably the only blight of the game. And like I said, we really didn't kick out of second gear, I would say. I don't reckon we even got into third gear. And that could be just the conditions, or, you know, Melbourne were just playing out of their skin, and you know, we were sort of on the back foot. I don't know, but I don't think this was the best that we've seen Collingwood play. You know, that's obvious because it was a 1 point sort of win, but we did well. I like having these wins because it's muscle memory, right? It's practicing that muscle memory. We did a lot of these in 2023, did a lot of them in 2022, not so much in 2024 unless you sort of count that Kangaroos game. But we still have the ability to shut down games. We didn't score a goal for, 6 or 7 minutes at the end, and neither did Melbourne. So we practice that muscle memory that we can still win these close games. We can still see them out, but we also have those games where we can win by 50 points when we want to. Now, it'd be remiss of me to not talk about Nick Dacos, umpires. So Nick Dacos didn't have his best game by any stretch of the imagination. He had 20-something, one goal. I think it was one goal one or one goal two. He had 8 clearances, though, which, you know, you love to see. He got heavily tagged, right? And I don't mind, you know, everyone's going to tag Nick Dacos. I get it. But when you're holding him every single time at every single contest, these umpires need to stamp it out straight away. It happened probably the first bounce. Ed Langdon wrapped his arms around him. You're getting free kicks around the ground for that, right? But every single contest, it was a shirt hold. It was an arm hold. It was, you know, the umpires need to stand. I don't care if you're giving Nick Dacos 8 free kicks a game, because he's getting held more than 8 times. Ed Langdon had 4 touches, right? He touched Dacos more than he touched the ball. Do you understand how crazy that is? Do you understand how crazy that sounds? I don't like it. I understand that that's what the game is now, and Nick Dacos has to, Nick Dacos has to sort of get used to that tag. But also, Craig McRae, a few weeks back, I can't remember which game it was, said that we need to do, as a club and the players, need to do better at protecting Nick, you know, when this is sort of happening. And we sort of saw that a little bit. We have to get better at it. And I don't mean cleaning up Ed Langdon or something like that. I just mean protecting Nick a little bit more when you see him around a contest. It's blocking. It's putting the screen up like they do in basketball and stuff. I don't even know if that's the right terminology because I don't watch the basketball. You know what I mean? We just need to help him out that little bit. And, you know, I just get frustrated, man. I just get really, really frustrated. And I know a lot of oppos are saying, Collingwood are getting looked after by the umpires and this and that. And, they're, 29 free kicks to 20. Like, look, I love to complain about the umpires, right? Some of those calls were 50-50. Some of the calls that went to us, some of them were a bit how's it going. Some of the calls that went to Melbourne were a bit how's it going as well. What is so funny to me, and I guess what opposition supporters, especially if they're not Melbourne supporters, I guess, don't see, it's like, Collingwood had 26 players out there. Of course they won. It's like, well, Melbourne had, let me tell you, Melbourne had 5 more scoring shots at goal than us. They had more clearances than us. They were plus 10 in clearances. They were plus 26 in hitouts. They were plus 9 in inside 50s. So they had chances to win the game themselves. Fritsch didn't have to play on and for Quaynor to tackle him and kick him off his game. He could have just gone back, take 30 seconds off the clock, and shot a goal. They would have been in front by whatever it was. They had a lot of opportunities. Yes, it's different when you get a questionable free kick right on the final siren in front of goal and stuff like that. I understand that. That would frustrate the hell out of me. But when you're on paper playing, you've got these numbers, you probably should be winning the game. And call me out if I complain about umpires and we're like Melbourne and I'm complaining about the umpires. Call me out because I'll slap myself because it's not on. But look, Melbourne had their opportunities to win. We were just better. It is what it is. Let me know your thoughts down below. But until then, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets. And until next time, double shackers. I'll swoop you later.